Officer Donnelly had thought this would be an easy win, a loud-mouthed teen with no legal knowledge. What he didn't expect, however, was for her to build such a rock-solid case that it shattered his career right in front of a packed courtroom. The courtroom buzzed with noise, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle sound that filled the air. The low hum of an old fan spun lazily in the corner. The soft scratch of the clerk's pen across paper. The shuffle of cheap plastic chairs as people shifted in their seats. Yet, everything went still when Ariel Manning entered. She wasn't dressed to impress. Her outfit was simple. A navy blazer, khaki pants, and flats. It was the kind of thing you'd wear to a high school debate or a Sunday service. But Ariel wore like armor. Her hair was neatly pulled back into a bun. Her glasses perched low on her nose, and there was a calmness about her, an aura of control. She looked like someone who had already read the final chapter of a book everyone else was still struggling to understand. She walked to the defense table and took a seat. No lawyer beside her, just her, 17 years old and accused of obstructing justice. Alone. That's when Officer Rick Donnelly chuckled. It wasn't loud, but enough to catch the bailiff's attention. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, like he was watching a bad sitcom, already knowing the punchline. Judge Raymond Keyes glanced up. "Miss Manning, you're representing yourself today?" he asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Ariel replied, her voice smooth and confident, with no hint of nervousness. Donnelly leaned back in his seat at the prosecutor's table, arms crossed, muttering to himself, "This'll be quick." Ariel didn't flinch. To the rest of the courtroom, it appeared simple, just another girl from the east side of Phoenix trying to be clever. Another routine arrest. Another case number added to the pile. But what they didn't know, not yet, was that Ariel Manning had spent the last 4 weeks preparing as though her life depended on it. And to her, it did. She took in the room, her gaze briefly stopping on her mother in the back row. Her mother's face was an unreadable mask, her breath shallow. Ariel nodded, not for comfort, but for confirmation. She had this. The bailiff called the case. The State of Arizona versus Ariel Elise Manning. Case number 22-135B. 1 count of obstruction of justice. 1 count of interfering with police procedure. Ariel stood, ready. The judge glanced at his file. "Miss Manning, I've reviewed the charges. You've waived your right to an attorney. I must caution you, this is not traffic court. You will be held to the same standards as a licensed attorney." Ariel's voice was steady. "I understand, Your Honor." Donnelly shook his head in disbelief. A girl like her, quoting legal codes, defending herself? It was almost laughable. But what he didn't realize was that Ariel hadn't wasted a single moment after her arrest. She hadn't been out partying, skipping school, or posting online about how unfair life was. No, she had been reading, studying, watching courtroom footage on public records, calling legal aid hotlines under fake name just to hear how real lawyers build a case. Most importantly, she'd spent hours rewatching the footage from her cracked phone, over and over again, because when she hit record that day outside Roosevelt, she knew this moment was coming. Ariel Manning wasn't trying to go viral. She wasn't seeking attention or fame. She was trying to protect someone. Her classmate, Angelo Ruiz, had been shoved face first into a fence during a heated argument about a broken locker. Officer Donnelly arrived on the scene, angry and shouting. When Ariel stepped in, without touching anyone, simply asking what the hell he was doing, she was handcuffed, shoved into a cruiser, and charged with obstructing an officer in the performance of his duties. The footage didn't lie, but at the time, no one cared. Now, that same footage was crucial evidence. But that's a story for later. Right now, Ariel adjusted her glasses, pulled out a stack of neatly organized documents from her folder, and placed them on the table in front of her. Officer Donnelly looked bored, as if this was just another ordinary day. Ariel, on the other hand, was ready. Arrogance has a way of collapsing when faced with truth, and the truth was about to make the entire room sit up and pay attention. It all started on a Tuesday. Hot, dry, classic Arizona heat that made metal fences feel like they were cooking on a stove. School had just let out, and Ariel was waiting near the corner of South 13th Avenue and West Adams Street. She was halfway listening to music, halfway scrolling through a group project chat when she heard it. Raised voices. A crowd starting to form. She pocketed her phone and walked toward the noise. There, she found Angelo Ruiz, a junior with a reputation for being loud but harmless, arguing with a school security guard. The issue was a broken locker, with someone blaming D'Angelo. But it wasn't D'Angelo doing the yelling. It was the adult, the one in uniform. And that's when Officer Donnelly showed up. He wasn't part of the school security team. He was with Phoenix PD, assigned to patrol this part of town after a recent uptick in petty crime. Everyone knew him. Big, square shoulders, sunglasses always on, always near his belt like he was waiting for an excuse to use them. Ariel had seen him around before. She had seen how he spoke to kids, not as people, but as problems. This time, things didn't seem any different. Donnelly stormed over, didn't ask a single question, and grabbed Angelo by the arm. The kid yanked back instinctively. No punches, no threats, just fear. And that was enough for Donnelly to slam him into the fence. Ariel froze for a second, then pulled out her phone. "You can't do that," she said. "He didn't do anything." Donnelly glanced at her, like she was gum on the bottom of his shoe. "Back up," he barked. "I'm recording this," Ariel replied, her voice steady, loud enough for the other students to hear. "You didn't even ask what happened," she added. Donnelly, letting go of D'Angelo and stepping toward her, sneered. "You want to interfere?" Ariel didn't flinch. "You're not allowed to use excessive force without cause. I know my rights." "You know your rights?" he repeated mockingly. "How about you learn the consequences?" And just like that, Ariel was shoved against a patrol car, her arms wrenched behind her back, her phone yanked from her hand. "You can't," she started, but he was already locking the cuffs around her wrists. "Obstruction," he muttered, loud enough for his body cam to pick up. She interfered with police activity. Students gasped. Some of them pulled out their phones, but the damage had already been done. By the time Ariel's mother arrived at the precinct, Ariel had already been fingerprinted, booked, and told that she would have to face a judge. The days that followed were quiet, heavy, and difficult. No lawyer would take her case for free. Public defenders were overwhelmed. Her mother worked double shifts at the VA hospital and didn't have the money to fight it. So Ariel went to work herself. She remembered what her aunt used to say. If you want someone to hear you, first learn their language. That night, Ariel watched 4 hours of courtroom videos on YouTube. The next night, 6 hours. She started writing down words she didn't understand, looking them up, and making notes. She printed off the police report and read it line by line, highlighting every lie. She reached out to her cousin's girlfriend, a paralegal in Flagstaff. They didn't talk much, but Ariel needed all the help she could get. Every night, she dedicated herself to learning, preparing, and building her case. Ariel wasn't going to back down. This wasn't just about her. It was about standing up to an unjust system, and she was going to fight with everything she had. She had the evidence. She had the knowledge. Now, all she needed was the courage to make sure the truth was heard. When Ariel received a message from Jeanette, it was like throwing gasoline on a spark. Jeanette, a paralegal she'd reached out to, sent Ariel a treasure trove of resources. Legal code PDFs, public case records, video tutorials. Ariel didn't just study the law. She absorbed it, memorized it, and made it her own. She discovered what judges look for when someone represents themselves and found cases where young people had fought charges and won. Ariel even rehearsed opening statements in the mirror, recording herself on a borrowed tablet, so she could study her posture and tone. The world around her faded. School became a distant noise. Teachers sent emails, some offering support, others not responding at all. But there was one teacher who noticed. Mr. Kirkwood, her history teacher, saw the fire in her eyes. One afternoon, when Ariel lingered after class, he asked, "You're not giving up, are you?" "No," she replied. "I'm just getting ready." But the thing about getting ready is that people rarely notice the effort until the spotlight shines on you. And when that moment arrives, they wonder how they ever miss your quiet preparation. Ariel wasn't training like someone hoping to win. She was training like someone who had no choice but to win. Every morning, her routine was the same. Wake up before sunrise, clear off the kitchen table, and open her binder. It was thick now, 3 inches packed with printed statutes, handwritten notes, neon-colored sticky tabs, and pages from court cases she'd found online. She highlighted everything. Yellow for key terms, blue for contradictions, red for Donnelly's inconsistencies. She watched the video of her own arrest more than 30 times. Ariel broke it down frame by frame, marking the exact second Donnelly grabbed Angelo, the moment she spoke up, the time her hands were visible. What she didn't do was cry. Her mother, Patrice, had suggested she take a plea deal. "We can't afford to gamble, baby," she whispered one night over reheated casserole. "They've got the badge, they've got the judge. You don't win in rooms like that." Ariel didn't answer right away. She chewed slowly, then pushed the plate away. "I'm not trying to win, ma'am," she said quietly. "I'm trying to show them I don't scare easy." That moment, that calm defiance, shook Patrice more than any shouting could have. Later that night, Ariel sat alone in her room, a borrowed laptop from Mr. Kirkwood balanced on a pillow. The glow of the screen illuminated her face as the cursor blinked on a Word doc titled Opening Statement Draft 4. Every time she read aloud, she caught something new, a word too soft, a line too emotional, a sentence that didn't quite feel like her. She didn't want to come across as angry. Angry meant loud. Angry meant people would stop listening. No, she had a sound measured, not because she wasn't mad, but because it would scare them more when a girl like her knew how to keep her cool. One afternoon, Ariel called the legal aid hotline again. This time, she asked to speak to someone who specialized in excessive force cases. The woman on the line sounded tired but kind. "Are you filing a complaint or facing charges?" "Both," Ariel said. "Technically." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "Well, damn. All right. What's your name?" Ariel hesitated, then gave it, for the first time, over the phone. Over the next half hour, they reviewed her report. Jeanette, the woman on the phone, walked her through which parts of the statute the district attorney would likely use and how judges often react to teen defendants without counsel. "Don't try to sound smart," Jeanette advised at one point. "Try to sound certain." That line stuck. Ariel wrote it down on a sticky note and slapped it on the top of her binder. Don't try to sound smart. Try to sound certain. In her spare moments, Ariel practiced. She practiced in front of mirrors, in front of her mom, and even once in front of 2 kids on her block who usually just played video games on her porch. "What if the judge interrupts you?" one of them asked. "Then I wait," Ariel replied, "and when he's done, I make sure he hears me anyway." Mr. Kirkwood offered to be a character witness, and her cousin's girlfriend sent her a PDF on how to structure cross-examinations. Even the school janitor, Mr. Leroux, who barely spoke a full sentence most days, handed her a legal book one afternoon with a knowing look in his eyes. Ariel wasn't just preparing for a trial. She was preparing to make history. She was preparing to stand up in a courtroom and fight not just for her innocence, but for something far bigger, her voice. She wasn't a passive teenager anymore. She was a force, armed with knowledge, determination, and the quiet power of someone who had been underestimated for too long. The old dictionary he kept from his night classes back in 2002 had become more than just a reference. It had become a symbol of his unwavering belief that this would be a quick, easy win. Officer Donnelly was convinced Ariel would be a pushover, a girl with no legal training, no degree. He thought he could toss out a few buzzwords, make a show of it, and walk away unscathed. But he had no idea that the teenager sitting across from him had prepared more thoroughly than many lawyers he'd faced in real courtrooms. Belief has a way of crumbling when it is confronted by truth, especially when truth comes armed with a microphone, and Ariel was more than ready to speak. The courtroom looked different this time. It wasn't an arraignment anymore. This was a trial. Same judge, same ceiling fan. But now, the back seats were full. A few teachers from Roosevelt High had come to show their support. D'Angelo sat near the front, his mother beside him, and somewhere in the back, in the corner, sat a reporter from the Arizona Daily Sunday. Someone had tipped her off about the girl who was defending herself against a police officer. Ariel stood as the judge entered. "Be seated," Judge Keyes said, straightening his glasses. The bailiff looked between Ariel and Donnelly. State of Arizona versus Ariel Manning, trial in session. The bailiff announced, The prosecutor gave a dull opening statement, framing Ariel as disruptive and disrespectful, someone who escalated an already tense situation. Donnelly sat behind her, arms folded, occasionally smirking like this was just another routine shift. But he didn't know what was coming. Then it was Ariel's turn. She walked confidently to the center of the courtroom, notes in hand. But she didn't read from them. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court," she began, looking directly at the jury. "I'm not a lawyer. I won't pretend to be. But I do know what I saw. And more importantly, I know what I lived through. I'll let the facts speak for themselves." She returned to her table, simple, clean, and resolute, but not passive. The judge nodded slightly, impressed by her composure. Next came the witnesses. The prosecutor called Officer Donnelly first. He took the stand with practiced ease. "Officer Donnelly," the prosecutor began, "can you describe what happened on the afternoon of September 12th? Donnelly leaned in, looking confident. "Yes," he said. "I arrived at Roosevelt High after receiving a report of an aggressive student. When I got there, the situation had escalated. I restrained the student for safety, and this young woman began shouting, interfering with my ability to manage the incident." Ariel listened quietly, jotting down notes as Donnelly spoke. When the prosecutor finished, the judge turned to Ariel. "Your witness," he said. Ariel stood, her heart steady, her voice clear. "Officer Donnelly," she began, "how long have you been with the Phoenix Police Department?" 17 years. "And in those 17 years, how many times have you arrested a student for obstruction without a physical altercation?" Donnelly raised a brow. "Several. It depends on the threat level." "Was I a threat to you, sir?" Ariel asked calmly. "You were yelling." "I couldn't focus on the scene," Donnelly replied. "I was standing 12 feet away." "Is that correct?" Ariel pressed. Donnelly paused. "Approximately." "You didn't ask me to leave the area. You told me to back up. Is grabbing a student by the back of the neck standard protocol?" Ariel asked, her tone measured. The prosecutor objected, saying Ariel was assuming facts, not evidence. The judge sustained the objection. Ariel took a breath and pivoted. "No further questions, Your Honor." She walked back to her table, calm and collected. The prosecutor called 2 more witnesses. One school security officer who vaguely remembered seeing Ariel recording the incident, and a student who said they weren't really paying attention at the time. Then it was Ariel's turn to call her own witnesses. She called Mr. Kirkwood first. He described her as sharp and driven, someone who never caused trouble. He said Ariel was the one other kids turned to when they didn't understand an assignment. "You don't expect a kid like that to act impulsively," he said. Next, Ariel called D'Angelo. He sat down, nervous but honest. "She was helping me," he said. "She didn't even touch anyone. She just asked what was going on." "Did she threaten Officer Donnelly?" Ariel asked. "No," D'Angelo replied. "Did she interfere physically?" Ariel pressed. "No," D'Angelo said. "She had her phone out. That's it." Ariel nodded, looking at the judge. The room had fallen silent, and for the first time, Officer Donnelly looked uncertain. Ariel had made her case, and she wasn't done yet. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter a video file into evidence," Ariel said, her voice steady as she addressed court. "It's from my phone, taken at the time of the incident." The judge nodded, granting permission. The video began to play. The audio was a little crackly, but clear enough to capture the critical moments. Donnelly's shout, the sound of him pushing D'Angelo, and Ariel's voice. She wasn't screaming or threatening. She was calmly asking, "What are you doing?" When Donnelly grabbed Ariel, the camera angle shifted, but the words were unmistakable. The courtroom was filled with gasps, the tension palpable. Ariel didn't look at the screen. Instead, she focused on Donnelly, watching his confident demeanor slip away for the first time. The thing about truth is, once it's out in the open, it doesn't hide quietly. And in that silence after the video ended, the weight of the moment hung heavy. Even the judge leaned back in his seat, his fingers steepled, eyes fixed firmly on Donnelly. He cleared his throat. "Officer, would you like to respond to what we just saw?" Donnelly shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "The video doesn't show the whole interaction, Your Honor," he said. You can't see the angle I was at. She was provoking a volatile situation. Ariel stood. Objection, she said firmly. That's a subjective opinion, not a factual correction. The judge glanced at her. Sustained. Officer, stick to the facts. Donnelly tried again. I perceived her behavior as threatening. But Ariel didn't look angry. She looked prepared, poised. Officer Donnelly, Ariel said, stepping back into her cross-examination. In your original police report, you said, and I quote, the subject approached aggressively, yelling, and failed to comply with verbal warnings. Is that correct? Yes, Donnelly replied. But in the video, Ariel continued, my voice is calm. I'm standing in place. I never moved closer to you. Donnelly shifted uncomfortably. Videos can be deceiving. I agree, Ariel said smoothly. That's why I submitted a time-stamped analysis. She held up a printed screenshot for the court to see. This frame shows my location. This frame, 5 seconds later, shows me in the same spot. No movement, no approach, just standing. Would you like to challenge the timestamps? The courtroom was completely still. I'm not a video expert, Donnelly admitted. That's fine, Ariel responded, unfazed. I submitted this video for expert review by a digital analyst from Northern Arizona University. I can call her as a rebuttal witness. The prosecutor looked up quickly. Your Honor, he started. I'm well within my rights, Ariel said without hesitation. I disclosed a witness 2 days ago. Judge Keyes raised his hand, acknowledging Ariel. She did. It's in the file. Ariel leaned back into her seat slowly, calm, as if she had just moved a piece on a chessboard and already knew the next 5 moves. The digital analyst confirmed the footage's integrity. No editing, no tampering, and no movement from Ariel during the time she allegedly approached aggressively. Donnelly's statement was now under fire, his credibility starting to crumble. Then Ariel made her final move. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, I request the court to consider previous complaints filed against Officer Donnelly. Specifically, the 3 filed within the last 5 years. 1 from a parent at Dunbar Elementary, 1 from a gas station clerk, and 1 from a man he detained during a traffic stop last November. The judge raised an eyebrow. You're referring to public misconduct records? Yes, sir. All available through a Freedom of Information request. All filed but never prosecuted. The prosecutor stood, clearly flustered. Your Honor, those are unproven accusations. That's why I'm not arguing guilt, Ariel said, turning to face the court. I'm asking the court to consider a pattern of overreaction, a pattern of targeting people who ask questions. I'm not his first stop. I'm just the first one who brought a binder. A ripple of quiet reactions passed through the courtroom. Not loud, but enough to be felt. Donnelly, for the first time, looked like a man realizing the room no longer belonged to him. The judge called for recess. When court resumed, the atmosphere had shifted. Judge Keyes' demeanor was different, more serious, more measured. I've reviewed the footage and considered the testimony provided, he began, and I have concerns. Miss Manning, your presentation of evidence, your line of questioning, and the context you brought forward all raise valid doubt. The prosecutor's stance faltered. The room had changed. Ariel's methodical, quiet confidence had set the stage, and now the truth was doing its work. Judge Keyes sat there, his expression unyielding, lips pressed tight as he delivered the final verdict. The charge of obstruction is dismissed. Ariel didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't show any emotion at all, just stared ahead as if her body hadn't quite caught up to the words yet. I will also be submitting a formal recommendation for the review of Officer Donnelly's conduct, including past complaints and his actions in this case. Judge Keyes continued. It was then that Ariel exhaled. No cheers. No applause. Just a quiet, steady breath. The kind of exhale you take when you finally put down something heavy, something that's been weighing on you for far too long. But vindication, she knew, wasn't the end. It was just a moment when everyone starts asking how you managed to carry that weight for so long. When Ariel stepped out of the courtroom, the sunlight hit her differently, not in any poetic way, but in a way that was just brighter than she remembered, sharper. Her mom was waiting just outside the steps, arms crossed tightly over her chest as if trying to contain a hurricane. Ariel didn't say anything. Neither did her mom. They just hugged. It wasn't the kind of hug that lasts forever. It was the kind that says, "We made it. Now let's breathe." D'Angelo and his mom walked up next, and D'Angelo, his voice low and filled with awe, whispered, "You killed it in there. I didn't even know you could do all that." "I didn't either," Ariel replied, her voice steady. "Not until I had to." Nearby, the reporter from the Arizona Daily Sun hovered with a notebook, ready to get her story. But Ariel shook her head gently. "Not today," she said. "Not yet." Over the next week, the story spread. Not viral, not headline-breaking, but enough. The article called her the teen who defended herself and made the court listen. There were think pieces. School board members started asking questions about police presence on campuses. People called the House to offer college resources, mock trial scholarships, and even mentorships from black attorneys across the state. But Ariel didn't care about the attention. She didn't care about the recognition. What mattered to her was the record. The video, the one they had dismissed, the one they said didn't matter, was now part of an official complaint. Donnelly had been placed on administrative leave, and Internal Affairs had opened a review. Some still defended him, of course. He was just doing his job. She should have kept quiet. Why record everything? But for every voice like that, there were two more saying she stood her ground. She knew the rules better than they did. She changed something at Roosevelt High. Students began asking questions in class differently, more sharply. Teachers noticed. Some leaned in to help. Others stayed quiet. But the energy had shifted. One afternoon, Mr. Kirkwood called Ariel in after school. "I pulled a few strings," he said, sliding a manila folder across his desk. "There's a summer program at Arizona State. Law exposure, mentorship, mock court sessions. They take 20 students. I already emailed your name." Ariel opened the folder and scanned the application. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She just nodded once. Mr. Kirkwood watched her, waiting for her response. "What made you decide to do it?" he asked. "I mean, really?" Ariel thought for a moment, then answered. "It wasn't just about me. It was about making sure the next kid like me doesn't have to choose between being quiet or being in cuffs." He leaned back in his chair, a soft smile crossing his face. "I think you got more than a binder now." Ariel laughed, for the first time in weeks. That night, Ariel sat again at the kitchen table, but this time not with notes, just a blank sheet of paper. She wrote one sentence across the top. "They thought I came to defend myself, but I came to expose the truth." She didn't know what her future held, but for the first time, she had the power to choose what came next, on her terms. The message she carried wasn't just about a girl who beat a bad charge. It was about what happens when you prepare in silence, speak with clarity, and refuse to be pushed into a corner. Ariel Manning didn't ask for a fight, but when it came, she didn't flinch. She studied. She stayed standing, and she showed them that brilliance doesn't always wear a suit or carry a title. Sometimes it's just a teenager with a binder full of printouts, a camera phone, and the courage to say, "That's not okay," because justice doesn't always come from the top down. Sometimes it starts with someone no one saw coming. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear that their voice matters. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. We got more stories coming. Stories that don't just speak, but remind us what's worth standing up for.